Some of you may remember a few years ago when Indiana and Indianapolis were in the process of rebranding themselves. The state tourism office was trying to come up with a new identity for us, a new motto or slogan that would capture the attention of more tourists and draw them and, of course, with them, more of their tourist dollars. Well, they engaged marketing companies and they tested ideas all across the Midwest in focus groups, and they even solicited suggestions from some Indiana residents, which may or may not have been a good idea. Some of the more positive and complimentary suggestions were these: Indiana, a well-kept secret. Indiana, escape the ordinary. Indiana, the heart of America. Indiana, we understand if you wish you lived here. Indiana, it's like coming home. However, not all the offerings were so kind. Here are some of the less complimentary ones. Indiana, now open until 9 p.m. Indiana, come visit the 19th century. There's more than corn in Indiana, but not much. And my favorite, Indiana, flat, fat, and all that. Oh, yes. I could drive around with that on my license plate. Indiana, flat, fat, and all that. Indianapolis didn't fare much better. Some of the tongue-in-cheek suggestions were these. Indianapolis, your pork is ready. Indianapolis, that big brick circle between Carmel and Greenwood. Indianapolis, yes, you've flown over us before. Indianapolis, it's actually not that bad. Here's my favorite. Indianapolis, nobody's going to make fun of your mullet in our town. Well, greetings. I'm Jim Taylor, and thank you for joining me and In Favor Resources in this series of blogs entitled HOOSIER Proud. We're giving you 4 reasons why you don't have to ever be embarrassed about living in Indiana. As I said, I've consistently seen this kind of it's an inferiority complex that Hoosiers have because of the things we've heard and has been said about us and to us and the reactions we get when we tell people where we live. I mean, it's an embarrassment. Sometimes it's almost a shame. Well, there's no call for this, really. I mean, whenever Indiana is mentioned in the news by politicians, in the media, anything that Hollywood does, TV, movies, it's always negative, and it's sometimes insulting and even occasionally very hateful. We've gotten some bad press, most of it unfounded. And you know that place that you're dreaming about going to because it just sounds and looks so perfect and you vacationed there? Well, no place is perfect, but I believe Indiana is better than most. So this is the final in a series of 4. Let's just recap where we've been. In our previous post, reason number 1, don't be embarrassed about Indiana. Be proud of this because God has called you here, and He's called you here now. There are some decisions you didn't make for your own life. God made them for you. And Acts 17 says 2 of those decisions are when you would live and where you would live. God chose that for you. So if you find yourself in Indiana today, it's because God planned it that way. Reason number 2, God has great plans for our state. That's another reason to be proud to live here and excited to live here. We know that because Amos says, surely the sovereign Lord does nothing without revealing his plan to his servants, the prophets. And the prophets have reported some amazing things about what God says he's going to do here in Indiana. And reason number 3, because you have a part to play in what God is doing. In post number 2, when we read you some of the things that the prophets have said, do you know how God intends to have those things come to pass, to accomplish those? He intends to use you and me to do that. So what an exciting reason to be in Indiana. Without your contribution, we will not see all of those God-sized plans realized. And today, reason number 4, because no place is perfect, but Indiana is better than most. Now, I know that Indiana has its disadvantages. I'm not blind to that. I'm not naive about that. I realize that. But so does everywhere else. They have their disadvantages too. You may be thinking, oh, I wish I could live in France or Jamaica or Hawaii or Aspen or North Carolina. But if you did live in one of those places, you'd find plenty to complain about there too. You know you would. I know you would. California sure isn't looking good right now. And people are leaving New York City in droves. But after being born here in Indiana and living away from here for 7 years in 3 different states, when I came back here to the Hoosier State, it was like coming home. Just for the next few moments, I'm going to talk personally. In the previous posts, I gave you scriptures and reasoned with you. But I just want to share my experience about being in Indiana and why I believe that even though no place is perfect, and Indiana isn't perfect either, I still believe it's better than most places to live. Just a few months ago, my wife and I were walking down our street, and we were just speechless at the beautiful blaze of colors and the mixture of colors in the leaves as they were falling or preparing to fall from the trees. And I know that a year from now, I'm going to see those same colors, or perhaps even more glorious examples of God's handiwork, because we live in Indiana where the seasons change and fall means something. As I'm writing this, it's January. I came out of my house at 6:30 in the morning, and it was dark and it was very quiet. There was a fog all around, so it was difficult to see for any distance. But overnight, while I had slept, God had painted a beautiful masterpiece. 1 inch of snow fell everywhere. It covered our lawn, every blade of grass, everybody's roof, every fence, every bush, every tree limb had this beautiful white icing on it. It was just amazing. And I know it's winter in Indiana. I know I'm going to see more of that white stuff, maybe more than I want to see, but that's okay because I know spring is coming, and it comes every year after winter. And in Indiana, the seasons all change, and there's something for everybody, whether it's winter, spring, summer, or fall. And you know what they say. If you don't like the weather in Indiana right now, just wait a few hours or wait a few days, and it'll change. It always does. Enough about the weather. I live on a street with no crime. I couldn't say that when I lived in a suburb of Chicago, where the bars on the windows and where the city right now is making headlines for record violence and shootings and killings. I couldn't have said that when we lived in Flint, Michigan, where I caught a burglar in our apartment and where our tires were slashed one day outside of the building. And today, the poor residents there can't even drink their water. Here, I know the names of all of our neighbors on this street and a lot of the neighbors on that street and this street on this side. And when one of us needs help, the other ones are glad to volunteer. If something looks suspicious or dangerous, we warn each other. We look out for each other. The people I pass in the park a block from my house, even though I've never seen them before and we don't know each other, they smile, they say hello, and they compliment me on how cute my dog is. And he is. Even if I didn't have the cutest dog in the world, they would still be friendly toward me because in Indiana, that's how we treat each other, even people we don't know, even strangers and even visitors to our state. It happens here, and it happens some other places, but it definitely doesn't happen everywhere because Hoosier hospitality is a real thing. It's not something we made up. It's real, and people that come to our state experience it. When we hosted the Super Bowl in 2012, we received national plaudits, national compliments for our hospitality. As I'm saying this, the NCAA is planning on hosting their entire championship tourney in Indianapolis and communities surrounding it. Because we are widely recognized as one of the greatest sporting cities in the world, and because of the way we welcome visitors to our state. I could talk about the famous Hoosiers that we produced in science, politics, government, sports, invention, industry, religion, education, the arts, and the length of that list might surprise you. I could talk about the strong work ethic here, how this is a great place to have a family and to raise children, about the low cost of living, People come from a state I won't mention, but they come here and they say, man, I could have 4 times the house that I have in California. The solid base of faith in God and love for the church here. I could talk about so many things that make Indiana livable and enjoyable, and if I can say so, even preferable to living in many other states. I was once making these very points to a group in Indianapolis, and afterwards, a woman from England came up and said, I have been all over the world, and Indiana is the best place to live. She said, God's got this state. She's lived here for some time now, and I asked her, are you thinking about moving somewhere else? She said, oh no, I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. Shortly after that, another woman came up, said she had been traveling from Florida up to Chicago to move there, and she stopped by just temporarily to see a friend in Indianapolis, and she liked it so much here that she never left. She never got to Chicago. She still lives in Indy, and she says she's here for life. No place is perfect. I realize that. But Indiana, it's better than most. We don't often hear things like that. Not very often. We're called Indiana no place. We're called flyover country and worse things. So I just want to take a second. I'm not talking to you Hoosiers here, but I'm talking to everyone who looks down on us and who sticks their nose in the air and dismisses us and calls us names and insults us and stereotypes us and considers us of no account. I want to say this. You, sir, are mistaken. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't even know us. This is not the armpit of America. Indiana is not a state of losers. We're not Hicks or hayseeds, and we're not a dirty rabble. And we don't live here because we couldn't get into some other state, like they were full or something. Most of us have our own teeth. Most of us don't have junk automobiles in our yards. Many people in Indiana don't live on a farm, but we are very grateful for those who do, because if they didn't, you'd be starving to death. Most of us don't marry our cousins, and we have many other interests besides just drinking beer and watching NASCAR. We understand that you don't understand. It comes from your arrogance and your ignorance. And we know that you don't know what you're talking about. We are here because God called us to, and we know from personal experience that it is an opportunity and it is a privilege. So when people ask you where you're from, don't mumble. Don't say, I'm from Indiana. Don't do that. Don't say, well, you know where Ohio is? I live west of that. Don't do that. You tell them confidently, I am thrilled to say that I live in the Hoosier State. And remember, no place is perfect, but man, Indiana is better than most. We are now at the end of this 4-step process, and I'm hoping that you are more informed by the facts now, that you are more impressed with your state after hearing these 4 posts. I hope that you are more intrigued by the future possibilities here, and that you will be more involved in making all of them happen. You now know that you're in Indiana and that you're right in the center of God's will, working to fulfill His plans for all of us, not just in our state, but in the nation and in the world. You need never, ever again be embarrassed to live in Indiana. Never apologize for that. You can be proud to be a Hoosier. Well, I am so glad and so grateful to be working with all of you and bringing Indiana into its prophetic destiny, bringing her in further and further into God's favor. And thank you for joining me today, and I'm signing off now until next time, and I hope you'll join us in our next blog post and series.